Ebola survivors turn caregivers in the midst of the Democratic Republic of Congo outbreak. As fighting rages in Libya, artillery shells turn parts of a Tripoli suburb into rubble. And senior White House advisor Ivanka Trump wraps up her tour of Africa with a stop in Ivory Coast. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We begin tonight in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is battling with its 10th Ebola outbreak. Most healthcare workers need a surgical mask, goggles, hooded coveralls, an apron, rubber boots, and 2 pairs of gloves to avoid contracting the virus that typically kills about 50% of those it infects. But not Janine Masika, wearing only scrubs and a hairnet. Masika cradles a 2-year-old Ebola patient in her arms. Masika has antibodies in her system after she won her own battle against Ebola last year, and she now has immunity. Francesca Elena tells us more about the Ebola caregivers.
These children are infected with Ebola, but the woman cradling them doesn't need to wear a protective suit. 33-year-old Janine Masika is an Ebola survivor, and her immunity allows her to spend time at a treatment center in the town of Beni in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where she provides much-needed human contact for children, either struck down by the disease or those with sick parents.
The work that I do, taking care of these children, is because I'm a parent myself and have children at home. I would have liked it if someone took care of them while I was ill. These children cannot be without their parents because of this disease, and I pity their situation. That is why I care for them.
Some Ebola survivors feel stigmatized, but at treatment centers like this one, they are treated like heroes.
These women who look after our babies when we get tested give 100%. I appreciate them.
The current Ebola epidemic is the second worst on record. Of the more than 1,200 confirmed and probable Ebola cases, 29% are children, according to figures from the World Health Organization. The outbreak in West Africa from 2013 to 2016 is believed to have killed more than 11,000 people. Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi arrived in Beni on Tuesday to urge people to trust that the disease is real. Mistrust and widespread misinformation has led some to refuse vaccinations.
I ask you, my countrymen, my fathers, my little brothers, listen and cooperate with the medical response teams that are working tirelessly here to eradicate this disease. If you do so, this disease will not spread everywhere anymore, and we'll contain it and get rid of it completely here.
More than 760 people have died since the outbreak began in August.
Well, that report was by Reuters' Francesca Lena. Now, some 150 people are missing after a boat sank on a lake in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. That's according to a posting on President Felix Tshisekedi's Twitter account. Delphine Mbirimbi, a local activist in South Kivu province, told Reuters that the boat, which had departed from neighboring North Kivu province, wrecked on the lake near Kalehe territory. It says 3 bodies have been recovered and 33 people have been rescued. Tshisekedi says he is following the situation closely in order to identify and sanction those responsible. Deadly boat accidents are common in Congo, a vast forested country which has few roads outside of major towns and where boats are frequently overloaded. Turning now to North Africa, artillery shells slammed into a Tripoli suburb overnight, increasing the suffering to civilians from a 2-week assault by Commander Khalifa Haftar's forces attempting to seize the Libyan capital from an internationally backed government. Edward Baran reports.
Rockets and artillery fire slammed into a Tripoli suburb overnight, piling on the suffering to civilians from a 2-week assault by Commander Khalifa Haftar's forces. Their aim to take Libya's capital from an internationally backed government. The assault hit the southern residential district of Abu Salim near a disused airport, killing at least 4 people. This man says some of the strikes hit right here and that he's trying his best to calm down his children. The latest deaths add to a toll the United Nations puts at more than 800. Both sides blamed each other for the attack. The UN also says thousands of civilians were trapped in southern districts of Tripoli. Rescuers and aid workers say they're having difficulty reaching them, and electricity, water supplies and telecommunications have been badly disrupted.
Some nationalities.
The conflict has also exposed refugees from other African states held in detention centres. Hours before the overnight attack, this centre on the outskirts had its refugees evacuated to the city centre. The UN says more than 18,000 people have been displaced during the offensive.
That was Reuters' Edward Barron reporting. Now to the south of the continent, Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa on Thursday is set to preside over the country's 39th independence celebrations, an event that comes as his government is promising to partially compensate white commercial farmers whose lands were confiscated and redistributed to blacks during the decades-long rule of Robert Mugabe. Columbus Mavunga reports from Harare.
Glenn Johnston is accompanying his mother Agnes to the offices of the Zimbabwe Commercial Farmers Union to begin the process for obtaining government compensation. She was displaced from her farm about 17 years ago. They are cautious about the government promise of partial compensation for their seized land.
It's a promise on top of a promise, basically. It looks like we've been promised that steps have been taken. So now we are taking these steps, yeah. Will we get the money at the end of the day? Obviously time will tell.
President Emmerson Mnangagwa was quoted Sunday in state media as promising the partial compensation program for white farmers. Meanwhile, the Zimbabwe Commercial Farmers Union has received close to 1,000 applications for compensation which it will submit to the government. Union head Ben Gilpin says Mnangagwa's pledge comes at a good time as Zimbabwe observes its independence.
I think for many people, the last 20 independences have come and gone without such promises being even hinted at, and now the promise is that this is being dealt with seriously. So we appreciate that. From the point of view of Zimbabwe, how is this independence compared to others? It's a tough independence, we all know that.
Mnangagwa's ruling ZANU-PF party says it hopes Zimbabwe's strained relations with the West will thaw now that the government has agreed to pay former white commercial farmers. The ruling party also hopes the economy will improve.
Our president has demonstrated to the world how generous he can be, because he has agreed to pay people what they are not supposed to be paid. You cannot expect to pay a housebreaker for breaking into your house. And this is what happened really, using a gun. But we are saying, at least it's important that we compensate for their sweat. But when that happens, then the international world must accept Zimbabwe in the global family again, economically and politically.
Until now, Zimbabwe's government had refused to compensate white commercial farmers as a way to show the country's total independence from Britain. But critics say the seizure of the land from white commercial farmers is the reason for Zimbabwe's ailing economy. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Harare.
Deposed former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir will be sleeping in a new location on Wednesday night. He has been moved to Khartoum's Grim High Security Kobar prison from the presidential residence, according to family sources. Sudan's top military leaders ousted Bashir after weeks of mass protests that have turned into an ongoing sit-in outside the Defense Ministry compound. as the protests continue. Their leaders say the unrest will not cease until the ruling Transitional Military Council hands power to a civilian-led authority ahead of elections. The Sudanese Professionals Association, the chief organizers leading the revolt, are calling for sweeping changes to end violent crackdowns on dissent, purge corruption and cronyism, and ease an economic crisis that worsened during Bashir's last years in power. The Sudan's People's Liberation Movement, North, a rebel group in the state of Blue Nile and South Kordofan, said on Wednesday it was ceasing all hostilities until July the 31st as a goodwill gesture after the overthrow of President Omar al-Bashir. In a statement conveyed to the media in Khartoum, SPLM-N leader Abdelaziz Adam al-Hewi says the move was made to give an opportunity for the immediate and smooth handover of power to civilians. The SPLM-N splintered from the Sudan People's Liberation Movement that fought for South Sudan's independence achieved in 2011 and then continued an insurgency against Bashir in the two southern states that remained within Sudan. Now, White House senior advisor Ivanka Trump is in Ivory Coast, the last stop of her 4-day visit aimed at increasing economic opportunities for women on the continent. The trip by President Donald Trump's daughter is meant to signal the administration's willingness to continue decades of previous presidents' policies to empower women worldwide. But it also comes as President Trump has criticized foreign aid under his America First policy. White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara reports.
Africa is the only region in the world where more women than men choose to become entrepreneurs. And in Addis Ababa, White House advisor Ivanka Trump toured female-owned businesses where she tried her hand at weaving at a textile factory and sampled Ethiopian coffee while promoting a White House Global Economic Initiative for Women.
We believe that investing in women is smart development policy and it's smart business. It's also in our security interests because women, when they're empowered, foster peace and stability, and we've seen this play out time and time again.
The initiative aims to create opportunities for women in the workplace and in business through capacity building, financing, and pushing to change norms and laws that hinder women from prospering. Globally, women are paid 63% of what men earn. In more than half of the world's countries, women still cannot run a business the same way as men. They have difficulties in getting credit, signing contracts, and opening bank accounts. Another huge obstacle, access to education.
We need, first and foremost, to concentrate on our universities, to have educated women able to graduate from universities because they have many obstacles.
The Women's Global Development and Prosperity Initiative, championed by Ivanka Trump and signed by her father in February, allocates initial funding of $50 million to help 50 million women around the world become economically independent by 2025. Under his America First policy, President Trump has repeatedly pushed to slash foreign aid in favor of military spending. But this initiative indicates the administration is in line with 4 decades of previous American presidents' policies to empower women globally.
It's not radically new, but it signals continuity. And so if you supported women's economic empowerment in the Obama administration, then you should be willing to give the Trump administration a chance and take them seriously now.
In Ethiopia, Ivanka Trump hosted a women's empowerment dialogue at the United Nations Economic Commissions for Africa and announced OPIC 2X Africa, a $350 million financing effort from the Overseas Private Investment Corporation for businesses owned and led by women or those working to help them. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News at the White House.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We are still streaming our show live on Facebook. So check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still ahead on Africa 54, Parisians and tourists flock to see a crippled mother of France. But first, a look at Wednesday's headlines.
Our Voices, we're talking about the news and issues you're talking about, sharing stories of development and growth across Africa, around the world, and in our lives. Topics that inform, empower, and change the rules. It's time for Our Voices with me, Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick,
and Hadiza Kiari,
and Ayan Bior,
and Orion Itangi Shaka.
It's time for Our Voices.
One day after the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris ignited into an inferno, hundreds of millions of dollars have already been pledged to rebuild one of the world's most iconic monuments. The precious objects it housed have been saved. Lisa Bryant reports from Paris on the investigation into the fire, but officials so far believe it may have been an accident.
Thousands of Parisians and tourists crammed streets and bridges in solidarity on Tuesday in the aftermath of the devastation of a beloved religious monument. The Notre Dame Cathedral survived the French Revolution and World War II, but this devastating fire has dealt it a crippling blow. It celebrated its 850th anniversary a few years ago with a new set of bells that offered a more beautiful and harmonious sound.
Well, I feel very devastated, of course, because that's, it's a monument which has always been part of our life here in Paris. You take it for granted.
For tourists as well, Notre Dame is a deeply familiar symbol, a must-see icon for people of all faiths, but also so much more.
Some things are meant to be eternal. Just one of those terrible things. Awful.
The fire that broke out Monday evening spread quickly. Rescue workers evacuated people inside. Amazingly, nobody died in the blaze.
Attacking this kind of fire is very difficult because there are narrow spiral staircases, so to climb carrying heavy hoses and material is very difficult.
There are other small miracles. A crown of thorns that some say Jesus wore when he was crucified survived the fire, and Notre Dame's famous rose window has been spared. Coming just a week before Easter, the fire adds to a series of blows for Paris, the 2015 terrorist attacks, and more recently, Yellow Vest protests that have defaced the city and deeply divided the nation.
This is part of our history. It's like our history is going out, and I really hope we're going to build it again, because we're French, we're proud of being French, we're proud of our history. So for sure, we're going to rebuild it.
The cathedral will take years to rebuild, but donations are already pouring in. Private businessmen and companies have already pledged hundreds of millions of dollars. The government plans to earmark hundreds of millions more, which makes Parisians hopeful that at some point in the not-too-distant future, Notre Dame will rise again. Lisa Bryant for VOA News, Paris.
The spread of invasive water hyacinths in and around Cameroon's port city of Douala is causing problems for residents. The hyacinth's stubborn growth hampers shipping, reduces fish catches, blocks streams and invades houses. But local NGOs are working to clean them up, and artists are finding new users for the hyacinths. Moki Edwin Kinzeka narrates this report by Anne-Murielle Nzonkyo from Cameroon's port city of Douala.
A group of artisans from the Samuel Dipoko Gallery in Douala, led by Henri-Alain Samba, are using recycled water hyacinths to create artworks and display them at an exhibition. They are also teaching this kind of art to teenagers.
We want to initiate people at young ages to know water hyacinths art.
They work in collaboration with NGOs involved with the sustainable management of wetland resources, who collect the plants from the water, then dry and deliver them to the artists.
Every day we collect 2,000 to 2,500 cubic meters of free-floating perennial aquatic plants from around this area alone.
The livelihoods of thousands of residents depend on fishing, which has been hampered by the invasive plant. It grows quickly and forms large mats on the water's surface, blocking sunlight from aquatic plants and killing pond animals by using up oxygen. The overabundance of water hyacinths has led to recurrent floods and outbreaks of malaria. The high standing water is causing multiple problems.
Mosquitoes have invaded our neighborhoods, and big black snakes enter our houses and attack our children. We spend a lot to buy insecticides to kill the snakes, mosquitoes, and insects, but the invasive plants remain. At first, we had clean water here, but today lack water to drink.
Locals in Douala are lauding efforts to collect water hyacinths.
Collecting water hyacinths and invasive plants and turning them into something of value has helped the people of Douala. In some cases, half or more of the plants were invasive. These artisans have taught us that a nuisance to health can be turned into a profitable activity.
The objects we recover can be transformed to beautiful works of art, and we are ready to assist anyone who wants to have the knowledge.
But a lot of work still lies ahead to control the water hyacinth, a plant officials say is among the world's top 100 most invasive species. For Anne-Mireille Zwanke in Douala, Cameroon, Moki Edwin Kinzeka for VOA News.
Now, women are woefully underrepresented in technology, science, engineering, and mathematics. Jobs in South Africa, a homegrown UNICEF-supported program has worked for the last 10 years to bring 11,000 lower-income high school girls into these industries. VOA's Anita Powell catches up with a few such techno girls in Johannesburg.
Raquel Sirota has come a long way from her humble upbringing in Johannesburg's Tembisa township. She now works as an engineer at a top company. She was one of 11,000 South African high school girls who have gone through the UNICEF-supported Techno Girls program, which started in 2005. Now 24, she says it changed her life.
My life has literally never been the same again. So before the program, I wanted to be a doctor, and today I'm an engineer through that program. So I think a lot of what I took from the program was how it exposed me to the world of engineering, you know. So I think for the longest time, I never knew of how broad that world was and, you know, that I could have a place within that world, most importantly.
The program selects bright high school girls from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, gives them exposure to professions in science, technology, engineering, and math, pairs them with mentors, and follows them through their university studies. The program's founder says this is about much more than creating a new crop of workers. This, she says, is about changing the world and who runs it.
It is more an instrument or a program which is contributing towards gender equality. So rather than just running advocacy programs, let's come with something which can change the circumstances, can be a purposeful, targeted intervention of contributing towards gender equality.
For high school students Gugulethu Zungu and Queen Makaile, the obstacles are more than just lack of opportunity. Both are physically challenged and were chosen to participate in the program this year for their high grades in math and science. Zungu says the program led her to identify her dream career, forensics, but also to expand her horizons.
I like investigating and solving mysteries, and it actually makes me believe that indeed nothing is impossible. You just have to think out of the box.
For these techno girls, nothing, they say, will stand in their way. Anita Powell, VOA News, Johannesburg.
Now here's what's trending. Lavender Hill is located in the infamous Cape Flats in Cape Town, South Africa. But while most of the area is known for violence and drugs, some of the residents of Lavender Hill are determined to put their neighborhood on the map for something else, sports. Softball was started as an extracurricular activity in the local high school that grew in popularity and led to the formation of the Lavender Hill Softball Club in 2012. But this club is about more than just sports. The girls in this club are mentored by their coaches who help them make critical decisions about their lives off the pitch. Well, next up, a Hong Kong artist has created an artificial intelligence robot which creates its own unique paintings, asking the question, can a robot have an imagination? Victor Wong took 3 years to build and program the robot called AI Gemini, Gemini, and teach it artistic techniques. Randomness has been written into its algorithm, meaning Wong does not know what it will paint before it begins. AI Gemini takes an average of 50 hours to create a blend of 3D landscapes on traditional fresh paper made from a bark and rice straw. The average price for a piece on sale in London is around $13,000. And in other robot news, an American university has created a robotic arm which sorts recycling waste simply by squeezing it. Graduate Lillian Chin and colleagues at the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have developed the robot, which they call RoCycle. It sorts between metal, plastic, and paper, depending on its size and stiffness, using 2 pincers fitted with pressure sensors. Tests at the Massachusetts University showed it correctly identified 27 objects with an 85% accuracy rate. MIT says a RoCycle could work in apartment blocks and on university campuses. And that's what is trending today. Well, that's our show for today. Now, be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings today, Break Africa. That's between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us here in Washington. Have a good evening.